All right, welcome to this episode of All Things LOCS, where we discuss everything related to leadership, operations, culture, and strategies. And today we got Gerard Magee, who is a wealth manager and tax strategist. He's the principal advisor and chief compliance officer at Imagine Advisors. Gerard, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you,
So
brother. I
glad you're here.
appreciate you. Yeah, very, very happy to be here. So thank you.
So let's dive right in. Everybody has the same question, right? How do I make more money? So we're going to start there, but then we're also going to kind of also talk about something you brought up earlier, which is the goal isn't maybe just to make money, but how to keep it. How do we start making it, but then how do we start keeping it?
No, that's a very, very good question. I'm glad you asked, and you're right. That's what everybody wants to know, right? Everybody's always asking, how do I put more money in my bank account, take care of my family in the long term? And the reality is, unfortunately, it depends, right? So you can think about your primary role, the job that you do, and you're going to need to maybe cultivate some skills to do that. But the thing I also help people with is no matter where you're at and whatever walk of life you have, there are things you can do in the investment space that can really, really help. I'm not just talking about the traditional things that you might have heard about or read about, stocks, mutual funds. There are additional things that are out there in the alternative space that a lot of people really just don't know are available. So really helping people to understand how they can capitalize on some of those opportunities is primarily what I do in a nutshell. So, yeah, it kind of depends on your walks of life, your experience, and your risk tolerance.
What are some of the misconceptions that people have, maybe just around money and misconceptions around investing, like you said?
Yeah. One of the number one things I hear from people is that I don't have enough money to start investing. There's a misnomer out there that you have to essentially be wealthy before you can start to invest. There's nothing that's further from the truth. It could be further from the truth. I speak to young people all the time. A lot of folks would say, can you talk to my teenage daughter or son and really talk to them about laying a good foundation? And that's honestly where I think it could start. Maybe $5 a day, something simple like that, or $5 a week, if that's all you have, can really get you into the game. And having that mindset shift to realize that it's something that is attainable from people at all different levels, I think is a really, really critical first step. Other things about money, people realize they say, money doesn't buy happiness. Well, I don't know if that's true.
Yeah,
right?
wait, hold on.
I don't know.
Let me pump the brakes on that one. They could rent it out for a little while. I say that, yeah.
Exactly. Like, I don't know how true that is, right? Like, most people who say that don't have any money, right? So,
yeah.
It definitely, like, what is it? Coco Chanel said that the best things in life are free, but the second best things in life are really, really, really expensive, right? So,
it's balance, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So you can do all right with that. I'd probably say the third misnomer about money is that it's evil. A lot of people, they actually have a fear of becoming wealthy or getting more money, whether it's religious or the way they came up. They always kind of think that people with wealth or money, they've done something wrong to not deserve it, right? So they say, oh, you probably screwed some people over, or you took advantage of grandma, or, some other thing. But that's actually not really the case. The majority of the people that I know that are quite wealthy, they're very altruistic, very giving, because they realize that by giving out more money, that's what makes it kind of come back. They call it about the cycle of money. Right?
It's so interesting because like you call it like it's a currency. And if you look at kind of the word, like it's a current, like a current in the ocean, like it has to flow in order for it to work. Well, where do you think that comes from? Where you say, people view money as like evil, or you have to do something bad. Does it come from like financial illiteracy, where like they just cannot conceptualize where they can get money from? Like what have you seen that people get this from?
I think that it starts with upbringing. Honestly, it's like, I know I grew up in the church, I'm Christian, and I know that a lot of people, they talk about that religious start, and they kind of they almost mistranslated some of the things that are in there, right? Like I listened to a good podcast, Living L'Chaim, and they talk about like that whole mentality. Like, no, you need to actually have some wealth to be able to bless more people. Like you're missing what's going on here. And there's multiple cases like throughout Scripture, if you're Judaism, Christianity, and basically all of them that talk about why that's important. You know what I mean? How can you be a blessing upon others if you're not, if you don't have a pot to piss in?
Yeah, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Right. Exactly.
But I've definitely been around that where, like in the Christian community, where it's almost virtue signaling to be
I'm broken.
To be broke because that's and we're like, okay,
they got it wrong though. Like, if you really
someone lied to you,
exactly, literally. Because if you go through a lot of the scriptures and then you actually see how they're translated, you'll realize that, oh wait, I think I had that wrong. So I think that's where it starts. But to your point, it's exacerbated by maybe life experiences, right? They'll see people, maybe they know someone who got over on people or who screwed people over, and then they all extrapolate that out to be all wealthy people. Financial illiteracy does play a role as well, because they say, I've done everything I can to get ahead and I just can't. People must be, anybody who gets ahead must be cheating the system in some way. I don't want to be a part of that. I'm just going to be fine with my 9 to 5 and keep my head down and, live my life. And
I think we've seen that a lot too, where there are some entrepreneurs that are like they're making millions and millions and millions of dollars a month, like tens of millions of dollars a month, and you talk to them and you're like, are they stupid? Like, are they
how did you get so lucky?
are they on the spectrum? Like,
Exactly.
how the fuck did you like they are dumb, but they have the right principles and strategies in place. They don't have to be the smartest people in the world, and oftentimes they're not.
They're not,
but they are balling out of control.
Yeah.
And so I can totally tell how someone is like, hey, I got my degree from Berkeley. I have this interpretive dance, master's.
Yeah.
And then they see someone where like they are balling out of control, and they're like, he must have screwed somebody over.
Exactly. Yep. That's the assumption. They're like, he had to have. But it's funny you talked about that. I remember early on in my career, I dealt with is actually the Mercedes-Benz folks, and not the entire company, but it was like where the Superdome is and everything that they had going down there. And I remember we were going into that session super nervous. Oh, we were so nervous because we knew it was Mercedes, right? You got to have everything locked in. And so we were rehearsing. We were making sure we're good. We get in there to start talking about some of the deals that we're doing, and it was like a monkey fucking a football. It was out of control how unorganized they were. They didn't know what was going on. We were looking around like, wait a minute, like we felt like we had it together more than them. And they're super wealthy and everything's locked in. Their general sentiment was like, man, I don't know. What do you guys think? We're like,
Aren't you the billionaire?
Yeah, aren't you guys we were so confused by that, but they do so well, and then it almost makes you think I have it backwards. Maybe I'm trying too hard, or maybe maybe I need this to stop trying to put all this brain power into it. But yeah, so it's funny you bring that up. Yeah,
well, I mean, there's definitely nothing wrong with being over prepared, but then
you're
like,
right.
You guys aren't prepared at all. So what are we doing here? But you made a good point. Though, it's like I think at least I think the misinterpretation we have with a lot of people around money, right, is just you make more and then they see people in their eyes like, well, you just keep it all. Right. Versus to your point, it's like, all right, you make more, you can give more away.
Yep.
It's like I talked to my wife about my God, who was it? Andrew Carnegie, right? Like the guy like donated the most money ever. Made it. I mean, obviously made the most, but then he's just like, what am I going to do with this? And he's not known for anything other than the hospitals, the libraries that are all named after him. It's like, so you could do a lot of good with it.
Yeah.
But you made an interesting point about those individuals who are altruistic.
Yeah.
Because I know, when we were talking earlier, you mentioned you worked with a lot of people in healthcare. And that's a balance that I've seen too, where it's like super altruistic. I don't want to charge patients anything. I'm like, money's not great. And then you do have the other side of it where it's like, kind of screw the patient sometimes. Let's do the procedures that aren't necessary. But like when you're working with those people
get that money.
I gotta get this money.
I mean, so it is, right?
Get this
like,
money.
I don't really need the surgery, but I'm going to recommend the surgery.
Right.
It's like it does happen.
Yeah.
So when you're working with those individuals, how do you take that mindset that's there, like very conservative and viewing money as maybe the root of evil or just not great?
Yeah.
How do you start changing that around a little bit and maybe kind of tying in a little bit of just not their approach towards money, but even just their risk tolerance?
Yeah.
How do you kind of balance those out?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And what I find is it's so unique, right? And it depends on the individual that you're working with. It's a relationship industry. It really is. Anybody who tries to tell you that you can do it with like a robo-investor or something like that, they got it dead wrong, right? You have to know, like, and trust the people. And so as you're starting to build that relationship, I'd say my first probably 2 to 3 conversations sometimes, they're really just getting to know the person, really understanding what their values are, what they care about. I spoke to someone recently who they didn't have any dependents, no children. They didn't have a spouse. She made really good money. She was I want to say she was an anesthesiologist. And so she made solid money. And her thoughts were like, I don't really need anything. Like, I'm good. Like, I don't care about all the other stuff. It's just me. Like, why do I care? And I brought up some of the things. I said, well, what made you become an anesthesiologist? Like, how did you go down that path? She started to tell a story about how, like, she wanted to help people. And she somebody I think she knew that, like, didn't wake up from a surgery or something because something was off. And so that kind of planted a seed that she wanted to kind of go down that path. And I thought about that, and I was like, well, don't you realize that after you're gone that there'll be others that continue? What about causes that you care about or things that – and it really opened up her minds in a different way. And she's like, wait a minute. you're right. If I make more, like when it's time, when I go, pass away, there's a way I can actually leave more to these things that I care about. She really liked dogs. She was a huge dog fan. And so I talked about that, some of the dog parts. And that really is what got her really excited and motivated. And she started to get on that path. For others, it'll be very different, right? Because if you have generations of children, or do both of you have kids, or?
We got some.
And for yes, no, for me, yeah.
Okay. So like you start thinking about the legacies and what about grandkids and all that whole nine. And then I feel like that conversation is a little bit easier, right? Because you have these built-in generational, the next they see.
You got
right?
those hooks already,
exactly.
really.
Hooks
You don't want your kids to suffer,
Right.
do you?
Exactly.
You don't want them to have a tough time, right?
Yeah, you can guilt them into it. No. But it's very different, and it's dependent on that person. And I actually, that's one of my favorite parts about the job, is to discover those things about people, right? Having those conversations and getting to know them. There's things that come up that I can maybe help with that weren't even in the initial intent, right? And so I really love that aspect of it. And so
I'd like to circle into something where we talked about, being a wealth manager and tax strategist. And we were talking a little bit earlier about that there's like tax preparer, tax, so strategist and everything else.
Right.
And they kind of can mean different things to different people.
Yeah.
Break that down, how all these things, like what your definitions are. And then when should someone start to communicate with them?
The sequence, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the tax preparer is probably the thing that most people are familiar with, right? Everybody's got to file their taxes. Well, not everybody. Wesley Snipes didn't, but
they should.
You know what I mean? Everybody should file their
taxes.
taxes, but yeah. So sorry,
Blade
Wesley.
didn't do his taxes.
Sorry, Wesley. Yeah, but now he's coming for my neck. But no, so tax preparers, they literally help you with that, because it's one of those things that there's a lot of forms, right? And there's a lot of confusion on there. So they literally help you prepare that, ask you all the questions. Did you do this? Did you do that? Did you have this? And then they'll literally help you complete that. You can go to H&R Block or some of those simple ones. You could even kind of use the TurboTax or those online ones that will really help you through that. Now, tax strategists, they look at the tax code, assess it, and realize, okay, I don't want to call them loopholes, but the reality is the tax code is extraordinarily long and complex, and it's done that way on purpose, to be honest with you. Like, it could be simplified and make it very easy to just tell people, this is how much you owe, just pay this. Don't worry about the code. This is the amount. But that's not how it's done, right? There's thousands upon thousands of pages and rules. So tax strategists go through those, and they really try to find ways based on your situation that you can pay less in taxes. And it's all legal. That's exactly what the government's saying. They're saying if you do these things, you can pay less. Tax strategists will help you find those areas. That's really what they do. As far as when you'd want to start talking to them, obviously as early as possible, because some of the things you actually have to start to put in place before it's tax season. A lot of people show up right around April and they're like, all right, well, where's my tax strategist? It's probably too late. You know what I mean? Like, if you want to think about taxes for next year, you want to start looking at tax strategists right now. You can then go to a tax preparer after that, but you'll already kind of have an idea and a sense of what you're looking for. What else?
Wealth manager.
Yeah, wealth management is really about, think about like portfolio management, right? So if you come to me and you say, all right, these are the things I want to be invested in. I like crypto, I like mutual funds, and I like, just some stocks, NVIDIA. I want these things. They say, okay, I can put together a portfolio for you and monitor that and track it, the progress on it, let you know when things are ebbing and flowing so that you can maybe move positions. Wealth managers really help you with the portfolio management of all your assets. So not just those traditional things, but also if you have, say you had a business. I'm doing a lot of conversations with clients that are literally just helping them with their business profits. That's also part of their asset mix. So that's why I have visibility of that as well. And I can help them. Hey, maybe you should invest more in this because that could be a tax write-off, or because you need it. Like, your business is failing in this area, you're going to go under if you don't shore up that area. That's another thing I specialize in. So it's holistic. Yeah. It really is. Even with their home, helping people to maybe buy a house at some point. It's like, okay, well, let's look at the full picture and let's figure out what we need to do to position you to be able to afford that house, or to be able to put the down payment down, or get your credit squared away so that you can get that loan approved. Those are all things in the wealth management and all the things I do on a daily basis.
When you're working with a business owner versus somebody's got a W-2 9 to 5, right? How often should they actually be assessing like the full financial picture, right? I know some people are like, just set it and forget it. Don't look up what the stock market's doing. Just this. But then the person's like, that's great. I got like 9 investments. Like, what's a good timeline so I don't do it too often where I drive myself nuts,
Right.
but not too infrequent where I'm just ignorant and I'm like actually missing opportunities.
Yeah. No, that also great. I think it depends on what you're in, right? So I'll give you an example. Say you're in an ETF, SPY 500 or whatever. You're literally just, your whole goal is to set and forget, and it's a long-term strategy. You're 22 years old, and you're like, I'm not pulling this out until I'm 60, or, whatever. That's what you're saying.
Yep.
65. And so in that scenario, maybe you don't need to look, right? That's literally the strategy that you came up with. I'm just going to do dollar cost averaging, putting some money in every month, and I don't really care. Like, it's going to go up, it's going to go down. I'm just going to keep riding it. But there are other assets that you could be invested in that it's more applicable, right? So the buy and hold strategy, I think, is fine. That's like a phase one, step one. But as you start to become more sophisticated in what you got going on, you're going to need to look a little bit more frequently, right? That's how you take advantage of some of those margins, and you can increase the returns that you're getting by making shifts potentially if you need to. So to that point, if you're talking about that second individual, I would say quarterly. There's really no need to do it more often than that. I have a client or two that literally does, they want to talk daily. And it's an experience, so that's something, like, I'm like, daily, bro, like, come on, man. Like, yes, the same as it was yesterday. Calm down. Weekly is probably still a little bit too aggressive. Monthly is fine, but honestly, there shouldn't be that many shifts in every month. Quarterly, I'd say is the perfect spot. And for some other people, it's semi-annually, right? Depending on what they have. Maybe a very simple portfolio. Twice a year, we check in. Let's look and see how all the things are going, and see if you want to change focus.
Is there any like financial advice that you hear that maybe it was tried and true, or that you hear now, just like, man, that's such bull crap. It's outdated.
Yeah,
it's not valid anymore. But why are we all still recommending it?
Yeah, there's a lot. Like, I hear a lot in the IUL space, right? People talk about index universal life.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically in the insurance industry, it was pushed for years, right? And people talk about, this is the best way that you're going to monetize your value and capture things. And it's so far from the reality nowadays because, A, there's other vehicles that probably provide superior returns. And honestly, like, the amount that people are having to put in to even generate what they think they're going to generate is so much more than they're realizing. It's kind of a sad story. I'll tell you, I had a client recently who somebody had told them to get an IUL, and they put a lot into it. And then fast forward, and then they were in a bit of a crisis, and then they needed to kind of liquidate some of those assets. They were under the impression, because they had been promoted it for so long by so many different advisors or insurance professionals, they thought they'd be covered. They thought they'd be able to take the amount they needed and take care of what they had to. And they didn't. I want to say that their total cost, it was some medical things they had going on. The total cost was something like $275,000. They thought they'd be able to recoup at least $200K of that. The company turned around and offered them $4,500. Not $45,000, $4,500.
What a slap!
It was, and they had been putting money into this for years.
Like, the hell are we down?
Yeah, and they were devastated. And it was just really tough. So I feel like that's one that is particularly interested to me because I hear it a lot recently. People, I got this IUL that they told me to buy, or I got this annuity that they told me would be great. And you look at the terms of the annuity. What? What is this? Like, who put you in this? So I guess if I had to summarize it, it's not so much that the different vehicles are just wrong. Sometimes it's like the fine print, right? So, like, if I told you right now, hey man, you got to buy a car. You're living in Vegas. The city's really spread out. You're gonna have kids sports over here, school. You need a car. That's not bad advice, right? But then if I sell you like a beat up car that's always breaking down, bad on gas, then it's kind of like
high interest rate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, now you're like, wait, that's not exact. So it's a bad application of a principle is what I see probably more often. But
so I want to kind of go over to, so you come from a military background.
I do.
Air Force. Tell us a little bit about, getting into the military, what lessons you got from that, and how you apply that in your world today.
Yeah, absolutely nothing. I learned nothing.
Yeah. Just I learned anything. Thank you, man.
No,
keeping us safe, baby.
No, absolutely. Yeah, 22 years in the Air Force. It was an incredible experience. I loved
22.
22.
Yes,
oh,
thank you
wow.
for service.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. Yeah, so it was great, man. It was funny because when you come in as a young man, you don't know what you're about to go through, right? And so it's funny. I really, really like to talk to people in that age grade between 17 to 19, like just before they're like,
it's like, you don't even know, boy.
You don't even know. Yeah. But it's cool, man. There's all this, there's a vigor and an energy that they have, like, because everything's wide open, right? Or they're just kind of like somber, like, I don't know, okay, well, I guess I'm going to go do this. And you're like, man, you're about to, life's about to get you, you know what I mean? You're about to figure this
find out.
Yeah. And so I'd obviously say, like, the discipline is one of the biggest ones, right? So if I go down the list, I think about whether that's early wake ups or having to work out or eat right, all these simple things that you think, or even pay bills, right? You know, like you're in mom's house, you're like, I don't have to worry about some of this stuff. So a lot of that wake up to the world, because it's kind of a soft landing if you think about it. A lot of people, if you go from high school straight to the real world, we'll call it the workforce, without a safety net of some sort, it can be more considered a rude awakening. I feel like the military actually helps young people develop with some guardrails and then kind of sets them free. It's a really good system for that, for finding the right path. As you stray, they help you to get back on target. Do
you feel this varies from branch to branch?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely.
Before we go further on that, tell us on that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it's the discipline is discipline, but discipline is not all created equal, right? So it's funny because I was actually going to go in the Corps. So I was going to go to the Marines. It's a funny photo of high school of me and 5 of my good buddies. All 5 of them actually went to the Marine Corps, and I went to the Air Force.
Oh, I bet they ragged on you.
Oh, man, they did. It was tough.
They destroyed you.
That being said, out of the 5, all of them got out after 4 years, and I did a 22-year stint. So they were like, like they talk all that trash, but the reality is they're like, man, I should have gone to fucking Air Force. Like, I messed up. But yeah, their discipline is a whole nother level. A lot of it's physical, but really the discipline is mental for all the branches. That's the real ultimate thing. It's because your mind can help you overcome just about anything. Whether in the Army, the Marines, the Coast Guard, even the Navy, whatever it is, it's going to be a mental battle that you're going to have to overcome. And that translates very well to a lot of different groups, especially the financial sector. Mission clarity is another thing too, right? I talked a lot about different individuals and what their specific objectives are. That whole language, the way I even just articulated that comes from that military background, right? So I have people that think about mission clarity. What exactly are we here to do? What do we need to do to accomplish that? How are we going to go about that? That whole philosophy, I learned that from the military, and I take that into other things. And probably the third thing is accountability. I think that a lot of people go through life not really holding themselves. They always want to blame somebody else or something. It's always somebody else's fault, right? They got a bad lot in life, and they want to blame somebody else. I'm not going to sit up here and say that it's not a lot of times somebody else's fault, but how does that bring you value? What can you do with that? That's a defeatist mindset, right? And so that whole accountability and like ruthless accountability, I also got from the military, and that's in all branches. And that translates very well to other professions, you know, whether that be the medical field or the financial field or wherever you're at. If you have that type of ruthless accountability for yourself and for those around you, it'll help. It'll take you really, really far.
Was there a kind of a grace period when you got out of the military, when you're talking to just everyday civilians? Because I hear that all the time where someone gets out of the Marine Corps, and it was a funny story. So I have a buddy that came out of the military, and he was doing a trip, and he went home for the holidays.
Okay.
And he was saying like, yeah, I was just kind of, someone asked me about, you know, how things were in whatever place, and they were just eating, talking, and then someone in his family looks at him and be like, you know, you said like fuck and shit like every other word for like the last 3 minutes, and he's like, no, I didn't. I didn't even realize I was doing that.
Yeah, there's a language transition. I will say that. Not even just custom, but also just like lingo. Like you'll say, for example, hey, you want to go eat? Affirmative. Affirmative.
10-4.
10-4, right? Yeah, roger that. Like, yeah, copy.
Yeah.
Like, you know, just these, you know, lingo that you're like, oh wait, that's
we're at the bakery, dude. Yeah. Calm down.
Exactly. Like, I need to go to the commissary. It's like, you in Walmart, bro? Like, what are you talking about? You know, like, so there definitely is that. It's different. It definitely does take some time. And to be honest with you, maybe I'm still sometimes I catch myself still doing it. 'Cause 22 years is a long time, you know, like, so. Yeah. I'm not completely over that. I won't sit up here and fake the funk. Like, I never do that to this day. I still do every now and then.
I was going to ask, like, how for the person who's serving, the average person, how hard is that transition? Going
out.
from military
Yeah.
to civilian.
Oh yeah.
Not even just like if they've encountered some stuff, which we want to touch on, but just in general, it's like completely different. How do they translate that into kind of getting back to a normal way of life, so to speak?
It can be very challenging. I can say that the number one thing that you can do is about preparation. So I was actually fortunate because I had a rude awakening. I'll tell you a quick story. So in 2010, I was in a house fire basically. So I actually came back from deployment and I was at home and I was in a house fire. Fireplace exploded. It was a gas fireplace, had a leak. So 40% of my body is got second and third degree burns, basically the waist up. And so when that happened, it was obviously tragic. I was in a coma for about 3.5, 4 weeks. Got out of that, got medevaced. It took me 1.5 years to recover. Had to learn how to walk again, use my hands, how to talk, the whole nine. My wife was right there beside me the whole time. Like she's ride or die for real. And so
shout out to Wifey Poo.
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But no, 100%. And so as that was going on, it was fine. I decided to come back to service because I actually had an option. They were like, do you want to get out, like medical retirement or separation, or would you like to continue to serve? I wanted to continue to serve, so I opted to go that direction. Fast forward a couple years, and what ended up happening, I took a long flight. We were in Israel, and we flew to, I want to say it was Cambodia. So we went to, Southeast Asia. And so on that flight, obviously very long, I ended up developing a blood clot. And my left leg, I was like, what the hell? But I work out all the time. I'm very active. I'm like, all right, they thought it was an anomaly. I took another flight, maybe a year or so later. I got a blood clot in my right leg. Okay, there's something going on here. I got a third blood clot maybe a handful of months later in my portal vein, which is the vein that leads to the liver. It was completely blocked. After that, they're like, there's something terribly wrong. We need to put this guy on blood thinners for the rest of his life. So that's what I'm on now. I started with shots, and now I'm down to a pill. I take one pill, it's perfectly fine. Well, the military saw that, and they said, wait, if you're on blood thinners, you can't continue to serve, because if you have to go to combat and something happens to you, you're going to possibly bleed out before we can, help get you saved. So they basically said, you're probably going to have to get separated. I was at year 16. And the way it was working out is whenever you go through that med evaluation, they rate you based on the reason that you're being kicked out. In my case, I was being essentially let go or separated because of the medicine. So it wasn't the condition or anything I had like that. It was literally for the blood thinner. That's a very low rating. A medicine is a very low rating. So I was below the threshold to get medical retirement at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I have all the other stuff, VA was going to cover me. But as far as my retirement, it was like, I wasn't going to get it because my rating for that one issue is low. It put me into a bad place, right? I went through a lot of some depression, to be honest with you, as you go through it, and you kind of panic because I wasn't prepared for whatever was next. But again, that was at year 16. It took 1.5 years for them to finally come back and say, you know what? You're fine. You're fine. You can have a waiver signed. You'll be all right. So it was a lot of stress. That 1.5 years, I didn't know what was going to happen. I got to take care of my family. I hadn't finished my degree at the time because I thought I had time. I'll do that later. So I had to get into this hyperdrive. So for that 1.5 years, I was like on overload trying to make sure I was prepared for the next step because I thought it was coming any day now. Not everybody has that experience. Some people wait until they're 20 and then they try to figure out what they want to be when they grow up. That's the terminology we use. And it's like, that's a bad philosophy. And even if you're only doing 4 years, at the end of your 4 years, if you don't have a plan, it makes it very difficult. I won't lie. It's one of the most difficult things that actually leads to some of the mental health crisis that you see. They talk about veterans that get out and without a plan, and now they struggle, right? They don't know what they're going to do for work. They thought that they were going to just walk into something very easily, and they find out that that's not the case, right? So it's tough. I like to talk to a lot of veterans, or specifically people who are about to transition, to kind of help them just be prepared. Just start having that conversation. Think about it. It doesn't have to be your firm thing. Because I'll tell you right now, I'll ask both of y'all, did you guys think you'd be here right now? Like, did you think you'd have All Things LOCS in Vegas doing this podcast?
I got to show you my journal from when I was 5.
Yeah. When I was 3 years old before podcasting, I was like, one day I'll be like Johnny Carson.
Exactly.
So funny you say that, Gerard.
So I was answering no.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Think about how the turns that your life has taken along that time, right? And so I tell people, even if this is not where you're going to end up, starting on a path, having a plan is so critical. You know what I mean? You can deviate, but have a plan.
Can you expand on that a little bit further? Because I think at least in some cultures, and sometimes like in Hispanic culture, where it's like, you need to figure it out. You need to have a plan.
Yeah.
And it's like, what does that mean? How do
Yeah.
I begin? Where do I start? I never thought of one, or a life plan or whatever.
Yeah.
And so kind of break that down in your own, from your view of like, when you're walking through someone, you're like, hey, you need to have a plan, or start thinking about it. And they're like, Gerard, I don't know what that means.
Yeah,
Like, where do I begin? What do I do?
No,
What's that like?
Again, that's probably one of my favorite times to talk to people, because I get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I too didn't know what the heck that meant, right? So it's really, you break it down, and the way I do with all the clients is I have essentially, I don't want to call it a checklist, but it's a whole list of things that I can kind of systematically go through with them. At the conclusion, you now have a plan, right? So it starts, and it's in all walks of life. So you start to say like, okay, well, kind of, we talked about it a little bit earlier before we started shooting, is what are your aptitudes? What do you like to do? Right. And I kind of break that down. People say, if you didn't have any pay, you were getting no money for this, what would you be doing? You know what I mean? I kind of start there sometimes.
Maybe at the Win buffet.
Yeah, maybe
crushing
right?
it.
Might be something there, right? So you talk about, okay, you like to eat. All right, well, have you ever thought about competitive eating? And people laugh like, what? No, it's absurd. But I feel like that first round, there's no bad thoughts, right? Because it's just getting the juices flowing.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's actually a pretty fun exercise. You talk to people about, sometimes they come off a little silly or zany, right? You know, you're like, oh, competitive eating or this, that, and the other. But a lot of times it leads you down a path. Over some time, you start to realize, maybe that would be all right. Maybe I should be a chef. I do like to cook sometimes. Oh, okay, well, let's pursue that. Next thing you start to talk, it's almost like ikigai, right? You think about your purpose, and you're familiar, So you think about your purpose in life, and also like the meaning, and it's not something that you get overnight, and it's not easy. I'm not going to say this is something you have one simple
It takes a
conversation.
while. Yeah, it takes a while to think about it. Yeah,
absolutely. Like, and that's perfectly fine. People feel stress and anxiety because they think when I'm presenting those questions that they need to have an answer today or in an hour. It's like, no, this is just to plant a seed that's going to start you developing. I never thought about that.
Do you have a fun before and after of like, you had that conversation, you meet up with that person sometime later, and you're like, oh wow, like
absolutely.
Well, what's that like?
Happens all the time. It's magical. That's the moment. You know, they say like you do things in life for like those moments. You're chasing those moments all the time. And that's one of those moments that you really look back and you're like, wow, they're excited, they're happy, they got that job that they didn't even know that they wanted. You know, when you first started and they're on this path, then they're like, oh, also my wife's pregnant, and it's like, oh man, this is cool. Like this guy's on his way, or you know what I mean? Or this girl's got something going. Like, I love that moment. That's honestly my favorite.
So I love that you said that though, because it's really the truth, which is how many of us actually legitimately just sit down and try to figure out what's my purpose, like on this earth, right? Versus like, I'm gonna go to ChatGPT and like, you know what I mean? It's like, hey, ChatGPT, what's my purpose? But it's like, in reality, it's like, how can you drive yourself to like long-term growth if you don't even know what the hell are you really here for, right? And I think that's why you end up getting a lot of people they kind of accept mediocrity, and they don't, they're not accountable because it's just they never thought about what's my bigger purpose and how do I really help other people, so to speak. And it's interesting when you talk about like kind of what you said made me think of Stephen Covey's quote of like, start with the end, right? Start with the end in mind, so to speak, right? So it's like, and you see that with like professional athletes, like they wash out after a few years, and then it's like,
now what?
It's like, what the hell happened to you? It's like, shit, open some car dealerships, or bad, and then they get bad advice because they got some money. So when you're looking at like you're guiding somebody along the way to try to help them, figure out what's the next step look like. Right. I think part of the challenge that we talked about at the beginning too is also for those individuals who maybe aren't as prepared and mentally resilient as you sound like you definitely are. It's like, all right, like I need some help too.
Right.
Being in the military, where do they typically go? Like, we know in the medical system it's the the VA, but like they're just, whether it's financial help or social help, psychological help, like how does that look for those guys and ladies that need some help when you mentioned something about a lack of providers? I'd like to maybe have you touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So in the military, there's personnel flights, right? So there's actually an entire section of basically all the branches, and their job, so their military job is to help like family advocacy. Right, that's their overarching title. So they'll help with maybe marriage issues. You're having some issue, maybe you need to talk to a counselor, or not even necessarily together, but maybe just individually. Like for females, for males, whatever. There's also things that help you with child rearing, or if you're trying to give birth, or you're having some trouble there, you might need some maybe IVF or something to go down that route. They'll help you and talk to you about that. Or if you have children and they're acting out, or you know what I mean, and helping you go through that. So there's actually a department, a section within each branch that's what their sole focus is, whether it be mental health, So they basically focus on everything but the military mission. It's everything else, right? So like it's fine if your job is you're a sniper, you shoot people. That's what you do. But what about everything else?
Yeah.
And that's kind of their job is to focus on the everything else. There's also this mental health professionals as well. One of the things that I did mention before is that the problem is that there's two things. One is the stigma. You're in the military, you're supposed to be tough, soldier, resilient. You're badass, kick ass, take names. Well, they suffer through mental health issues as well. And so there's a stigma and there's a culture in the military, like you don't go talk to mental health because that means you're weak. Luckily, that's starting to fade a lot. It was really, really prevalent probably like in our parents' generation. It was unheard of for somebody to go to mental health now. But now people are starting to realize like, hey, talk about some of this stuff because it can maybe help you. Like I talk to people all the time. Probably the lowest point I had was during my injury. It's kind of funny because in that month and a half, so I woke up after the coma. I was still, it happened in Germany, by the way. I didn't mention that. But so I was in Germany for about a month after the coma. And it was tough, but not really. What I didn't realize is that the nerves in my body, I thought I was like, okay, it's not that bad. Yeah, I'm a little sore and things are a little tight. I can't move that well, but it's not that bad. I can get over this. Well, the nerves were gone and they grew back slowly and painfully. And I didn't realize what that was going to be like. So that month and a half, I was fine. I got medevaced and they said, you're going to go to San Antonio and you're going to recover at the Wounded Warrior Center there and they'll take good care of you and you'll come back whenever you're ready. I was like, I'll be gone about a month. They're like, Mr. Magee, just go and take your time. Don't think about.
Yeah, 3 days tops. Got
exactly.
it.
I was so much.
Tell the wife I'll be home for dinner.
Yeah. Basically, I was like, man,
keep the meatloaf warm.
Yeah, I piss excellence. I'll knock this thing out. Little did I know. So come to find out, it was painful beyond belief. Like there were multiple nights that I literally would just cry myself to sleep because there was nothing that could be done. One of the things about burn physiology is that the methodology that most pain medicine has, essentially what it does is it tricks your body into thinking you're not in pain, right?
Yeah.
So that whole situation doesn't really work with burn physiology. So what would happen was I'd take, you name it, Dilaudid, Oxy, whatever it was, I would take it and be loopy and in pain. So I was like, what the hell's going on? So I just stopped taking it. I was like, this is of no use. Like, I have no control of my faculties, but I'm still in pain. So I stopped. And, man, it was agonizing. And so it led to depression. It really did. You get low. And so you want to talk to people about that. And I'm open about my battles with depression during that time because I realized that it can help other people. It's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength to say that you need some help. And I feel like there's not necessarily enough providers to support the need.
That's so true, man. We did this event like a few months back in March, and there was a gentleman, that former Marine guy, who just lost his mom, and he went up on stage to kind of talk about some things, and he ended up breaking down crying, and he was angry at himself for crying. And he's just like, I'm no bitch.
Right.
I'm a
leatherneck.
Yeah, all that stuff. And we had to look at him like, dude, you lost your mom. Like you're grieving. It's so normal. And so he was just like fighting this battle of just doing what's very natural to us.
Right.
And then this kind of military conditioning that like you cannot show weakness and do this. And so we had it was an interesting kind of situation up on stage. We're like, okay, but yeah, this was just a few months ago, and it's I see that happen when people kind of beat themselves up for being emotional.
You're absolutely right, and you see it all the time. Like you try to talk to the different people in the unit, and you kind of see them going through some stuff, and they naturally, no, I'm fine. It's like you're not fine. Like I've known you for 4 years. You know what I mean? I'm telling you something's off. Like you don't have to talk to me, but you got to talk to someone. You know what I mean? It doesn't even have to be a mental health professional. Talk to a family member, a friend, like, you know what I mean? Like, just talk to someone about this.
So if there's a lack of providers, though, I don't want to say what the hell they do, but what's the solution? Somebody like, I'm willing to take your advice and open up, but I can't find anybody for like 5 months. Is the next time they're coming around. It's like, what do they do in that situation? Yeah,
that's really tough, honestly. Like that, and that's so the military in general. I can speak specifically for the Air Force. They've put a lot of emphasis on trying to rectify that, right? The issue that they find, so there's mental health professionals that are in the military, like we'll say an officer who's been trained in that, and that they're literally like a major or a colonel. The problem is, to be honest with you, on a lot of these military positions, the pay is not comparable, unfortunately.
To like the private sector?
Correct.
Yeah.
And so it's difficult to entice somebody that's not just trying to do it. I don't want to say the kindness of their own heart, but like, you know, they want to serve the country or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a barrier that you're always going to have. It's similar, not to shift gears, but it's related to like the tech sector. So like this AI and everything's coming right now. So people are thinking about, well, the military's got to be the cutting edge. It's like, it's really tough because the pay is the pay. You know what I mean? The military. So like, are you really getting the top AI mind when they can go to OpenAI or Google or whatever and make 7 times the money? Yeah. It's tough. So that's a barrier that's always probably going to exist. And you try, right? You put the call out for more providers to come and be a part of it. And then honestly, a lot of civilians, they actually do what they do. They're not joining the military, but they do kind of like, we'll say part-time, right? They'll do rotations and they can kind of go help and fill in at the clinics to go speak to more. And that's happening a little bit more and more as well.
That was going to probably be my next question, actually, is like, where can people in traditional medicine maybe start to fill some gaps or provide some support at least?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So talking to that family advocacy, and that's exactly what they really had to start doing. They're like, look, we can't, I don't want to say they're doing it pro bono, because a lot of times they do get some type of compensation, but not nearly what they could get elsewhere. And they're fine with that because it's not their full-time thing. It's a side thing, right? It's like, okay, I'll come over there a couple times a week to help out because I know that these folks need help and I want to be there to help them. And a lot of times the civilian providers that I talk to, they love it, right? They're like, this is fantastic. Like, going over here, they're like, I'm treated well. Like, everybody called me ma'am. Like, this is great. Like, everywhere I go, people are so respectful to me. And it's like, yeah, because you're helping. You know what I mean? You're helping us to achieve this. But that's probably right there where the focus is. But they can talk to those. I don't have the specific context, but I can get that to you after you want the numbers or emails and stuff like that. So if somebody did want to kind of lend some support, they absolutely have an avenue to do that.
It's tough because I've, being in healthcare, I've seen plenty of providers who, they take the military benefits. It's not always, it's like TRICARE, what have you.
Yep.
But a lot of times it's like insurance is shit. It's like they don't pay anything. So you got the same medical providers that kind of like, do I do this for essentially pro bono kind of free, or like, am I focused on running the business the right way? So that is definitely like, it's tough, man. Like,
it's
put
very
people
tough.
in a position where it's like you're making a decision, like people versus profit, but it's also just, you got to run a profitable business at the same time.
Oh, 100%. I think, I would say this though. I think that by the time you often get to that mental health professional, it's often late in the game, right? So like, you've gone through something really terrible, or you're just struggling with life in general, and now you almost go there once something breaks apart, right? Like, once the car, it's similar to mechanic, right? The car breaks down, then you call the mechanic. A lot of times, people don't often do the mandatory maintenance every year. They're just like, well, that's fine.
When's the last oil change?
Yeah,
1997.
Exactly. Yeah, you got a 1997 oil change. No, exactly. So I feel like a lot of times it's there, but I think that a better way to approach it is the whole village mentality, right? So I do find that a lot of people often don't necessarily keep tabs on their battle buddy, so to speak, as well as they should, right? A lot of these problems can maybe be addressed earlier on through the community, the friends, the family, the folks that you have around that can maybe help before it becomes a crisis. And so I feel like a lot of emphasis on that area, which the military is also trying to do. They're like, hey, COVID was tough, really, really tough, because it basically increased isolation. So think about you got a 19-year-old kid who's in Germany, away from home. They're from Ohio. They've never been anywhere. And all of a sudden, boom, COVID kicks off. They already were isolated because they're like, I don't really know. The food's weird. I don't know anybody out here. And now they're alone.
The schnitzel tastes funny.
Yeah, schnitzel tastes
but
funny.
this polliner is really
exactly.
good.
Yeah, exactly. That goes down real smooth. Yeah, no, exactly. But, and so that was tough because you literally couldn't really go over there and see people check in. And so honestly, unfortunately, suicide numbers, they kind of went through the roof during that time. That increased isolation.
And you've worked kind of in, tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, probably about half my career, I was a suicide prevention coordinator and working with a lot of folks and seeing the full spectrum, right? Unfortunately, I had a lot of friends who lost their life to suicide, and a lot of people who maybe went through attempts that then bounced back. So I've seen the whole gamut, some pretty tragic stuff, unfortunately, but also some beautiful things, right? You see the recovery and people overcoming things and then going on to thrive. But through that, you definitely learn. Well, the first thing I'd say to people that are involved in this situation is it's a misnomer that a lot of people blame themselves, right? So they have someone close to them that they do that and they feel like, oh, it's my fault. I should have seen this. I should have seen that. I can tell you from all the things that I've seen, that's not always the case, right? There's folks who will hide it until the end, and there may be nothing that you can do. So to give yourself some grace, like even if you're in that field and you're trying to help people, just remember, even if for first responders, you're not going to be able to save everyone, right? You can do everything you can. So give yourself some grace so that you too don't slip into depression for it, and just remember that. But yeah, really, it's just about doing it with the heart, right? If you're doing it from a genuine place, like you have to go through some pretty serious vetting to be put in that position, because they don't want you there to check a box. People look at that and they say, oh, well, if you're the SART guy, that's going to help you get promoted. No, I don't give a damn about that. Like, that's not why I'm doing this. And they weed out people that are doing that, because it has to be something that you're really committed to. You really have to want to help people in that type of way, either from personal reasons. Maybe you had a loved one that went through that when you were younger, or you just really, it's such a tragedy. There's nothing worse than what happens to a military unit after a suicide. Everything, the mission degradation, there's nothing that compares to that. You know what I mean? And because everybody feels, everybody from the top, the colonel on down, the general, whoever it is at the top, all the way down to the cook or whoever else, they're looking at like, what could I should have said something, or how could I have done this differently? It's
they start thinking back on the interaction as like, oh man, this is not a red flag, but maybe it's not even an orange flag. It's like, it was a yellow flag, little things, and I just didn't catch it. I didn't catch it. Yeah, exactly. May I make an observation? You have really good kind of warm, endearing kind of energy, like a really good like bedside manner.
Oh man, he just said I was soft.
Yeah, you're soft. Yeah,
that's what just happened.
But I mean, when you're getting calls from suicide, like you can't talk to him and be like, quit being a bitch. Like there's a level of
not up, buddy.
Yeah. Like there's a level of having finesse and understanding and being endearing and all that. And honestly, when you're dealing with people's money, like everything I described is like when we work with entrepreneurs and they're going through the ringer and they don't know how they're going to do payroll and they're kind of on the verge. Like, so entrepreneurs are twice as likely to commit suicide than non-entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And I've actually personally had some friends from a business perspective, they've committed suicide that way too. But do you see that kind of almost training in that place do really well with money?
100%. 100%. It's a keen observation you make, and I feel like I don't know which one comes first, right? Like I don't know if it's like, well, because this is kind of how I am, I have an aptitude for this, or because this is what I do, it made me cultivate that. So, I don't exactly know which one happened first.
Just like the chicken or the egg,
right? Exactly, chicken egg thing.
But it's good, yeah.
100%. It goes together, and you're absolutely right. Like those stressors, they mirror a lot of the situations, not direct, right? Like if you're at war shooting at somebody, it's not the exact same thing as entrepreneur, but the way that
trying to dodge these bills like these bullets,
exactly. Like the way that your body physiologically processes that stress, and it's similar, right? You know what I mean? It's panic. It's like, what am I going to do?
People don't talk about it too when they're there.
Exactly. People don't, especially just think about that scenario, right? Like you're the entrepreneur in the family, right? So everybody's looking at you like, he made it. Like he's the guy. You're rich. That means you pay for everything when you're there. But the reality is you're like, man, I'm trying to make payroll. Like, I don't know if I can, but you can't go back, right? How are you going to go back and be like, hey, sorry, I failed? There's shame in that. Like you feel bad. You're embarrassed. You know what I mean? Everybody thought you were the man, $100,000. And now you're like at the soup kitchen. That's not
a lot of pressure.
That's a lot of pressure, right? And so
they want to escape it.
You got it. Yeah, exactly. They want a way out, and they're like, man, if I could. And other people look at it, well, I have life insurance policy. If I was just gone, maybe my family would be taken care of. There's all these thoughts that creep into people's minds. So very similar, eerily similar, right? So
what do you what do you see for the people that do well? The ones that they're dealing with a lot of shit,
right?
Or even the ones that aren't, but they're balancing out a lot. Like what do you see as a separator for those individuals that, I don't say come out on top, because then I don't want to like say everybody else is below, but it's like they do really well, they overcome it, they're resilient, they adapt, and they process, and they have a great life. And some of the other people, which is probably a lot of the majority, don't. What do you say is like the main thing there that you see in those people that if you said, hey, I want to boil this down and bring it out to everybody else, what would that be?
It's probably their own perspective on, the locus of control. Yeah, you heard about that, like the internal versus the external locus of control. And I find that a lot of people with an external locus of control, meaning, like I kind of talked about earlier, who kind of blame their circumstances on outside issues, right? Things that are outside of them, versus the people who kind of look in the mirror and say, like, you know what, I can do something about this. The people with the internal locus of control, who, even if it wasn't their fault, like, for example, if you got blown up, by an IED or something, you could easily argue that, well, that wasn't your fault, right? You know what I mean? So
I didn't put that there.
Yeah, I didn't put that there. I didn't. So it's not so much that you're saying that everything is your fault, not so much that, but realizing like, okay, yeah, that happened. What can I do about it now, right? You know what I mean? And the people who can really, really internalize that really, really seem to do the best. Honestly, that's what it is. Because it starts with them. You're right. A lot of people say, oh, your support system. You got to have a support system. Well, not everybody has a support system, right? Like, depending on where you're at, you're just not going to have that, or maybe that's not how you're built. But the way that you view things, all the things that you've come through in life, whether you realize, hey, that's something because of what I contributed to, or that's because of them. That's their fault. That's what they did. Having that outlook is one of the, probably I'd say, the key thing that really helps me to distinguish how people are. And you can help people with that. You know what I mean? So I don't want to say like you're born one way or the other. No. You can help cultivate that in people, right? You know what I mean? Through sometimes it's slow. Yeah. The process is not, but it's definitely deliberate, right? So you can help people get there.
It's an awesome mental framework, and kind of speaking of frameworks, tell us a little bit about strategic wealth growth framework.
Yeah. So what that really is, it's kind of cool because the reality is like a lot of the finance and the money stuff is very confusing to people, right? I noticed that I have a lot of friends in the healthcare profession, and it's not so much that they're not intelligent. They're obviously very intelligent, right? They're medical professionals, but they don't have time. They don't have bandwidth. They don't really care. They're like, I'm fine. I'm focused over here. I have other things to worry about. So it's a simple, easy way to digest things. You break it down in like quadrants, right? And so I'd love to take people through it. Like it's really an education platform that really helps you understand where you're at and where you're going. And so we developed it because we realized that to have that conversation, you don't need to get into specifics. I can sit up here and tell you about traditional IRAs versus solo 401ks versus, other different qualified plans. All that doesn't matter. Forget all that. Let's keep it simple. You want to make money. You want to keep money. You want to protect money. You want to, grow money. Like, keep it simple. And that's what that framework's really all about. It's breaking things down in a simple way that's digestible. Each thing can get a lot more detailed, but it's the surface to understand how these things all kind of go together.
What about the two groups, because you brought it up, medical professionals, the two groups I'm always kind of interested in, not the most, but is like that new medical provider who's got a boatload of debt.
Yeah.
Right? It's like student loans is like,
loans,
like you said, right? Like what people see, it's like, hey, you're a doctor now. Like, where's your Mercedes? Like, bro, I'm driving a 2000 Toyota. I got like $300,000 of loans. So it's like that person of like how to start their life in the sense of I got to just pay the loans, but then how do I get a house and this and that? And then those doctors who are a little bit more seasoned where they're making good money, but now they're experiencing burnout and they're wondering, what the hell do I do? And I have this money, but how do I leverage it? And do I want to quit? But like, what could I do on the side maybe to still ease my burden, so to speak?
Yeah. No, so you're saying what is like the kind of the difference?
Yeah, like what's like how do you kind of like guide them and advise those individuals? Because two very different people.
Very different. Yep, and you're absolutely right. It's the horizon is important, right? So you talked about whether any profession really, but you think about what you're really talking about is kind of early stage versus like later stage is kind of how it comes, right? And so you're absolutely right. The objectives and the things that you care about, your values, they shift during that time period. That first person is overwhelmed because of what's to come, and they're looking at this mountain of debt, and it just seems insurmountable, right? You know the old adage, like, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? That whole philosophy, it plays true. It's funny because I talked to a good mentor of mine in the military. He says, you learned everything you needed to know in the 5th grade. And he talks about all these like little nuggets like that we might have learned when we were kids. It's like, but you forget them almost as you become an adult because you're like, oh, that's childish. It's like, no, they were onto something. Yeah. Like that, it's actually kind of true, right? So to really not look at the big picture with those folks, I really like to break it down to like, let's look at the month. Then we're going to look at the 2 months. Then we're going to look at the quarter. You know what I mean? Instead of this whole mountain of debt in the next 7 to 15 years that it's going to take them to pay that off. Let's not worry about that right now, right? You know what I mean? I want to simplify that. For the person on the other end of the spectrum, that's actually, I really like to get those people motivated about the next chapter. I remind them what it was like when they were in step 1 and how they made it through. And I just kind of explain that this is another transition that you're going through. You didn't know how you were going to get here back then. Let me help you to understand that there's another place for you to go. You're in, grandpa mode or grandma mode, and you're doing other things, and I'm going to help you to do that. So whether that be investing in certain spaces or maybe transitioning the business, generational planning for that, because a lot of times their kids aren't necessarily going to take the practice over, or they may not have a partner who's going to be next. So that's also a concern, especially if you have employees. because you want them to be taken care of. So like, well, what am I going to do? I'm not just going to unplug and take off. Like I care about these people. So there's a lot of different concerns there, but it's really just those conversations. It really is. I know that it sounds so cliche, like really just talking to people, really back and forth and helping them through whatever they got going on. Like, you know what I mean? And but it is a different approach. You're absolutely right. It's just getting their focus on what's at hand and what they can control.
I mean, we talk about that a lot too. It's like, even that person who's older, like you said, it's like, hey, like I'm 50, I'm kind of maybe losing some of the passion, so to speak.
Right.
But what do I do? Do I just close up shop? Do I, try to find a venture capitalist if they even know what that is?
Right,
go to the local hospital system and see if they'd want to buy them out. So it's, you don't really have like that end of stage planning. And then, like you said, with the younger person, it's just we create this mountain that if you're looking at it, like $300,000-$400,000 of debt is no joke.
Yeah, it feels like you're never going to get out of it.
Yeah, so if you're just looking at that, it's like, good God, like how am I ever going to pay this back? Versus like, all right, how do we kind of simplify this approach?
Right. Yep. Exactly.
So that we covered a lot of really good things, and I just want to say, thank you so much for your service and also what you did with working with veterans and suicide, and it's awesome with what you're doing, and I think you have just so much success. I think it's just thank you so much for coming. And
of course,
if someone wants to connect with you, work with you, what is the best way for someone to do that?
Yeah, the best way. So obviously, the name comes Imagine Advisors. So our handles are on the socials with Imagine Advisors. Look for that. You'll find me. I'm very easy to find. I'm always smiling. So people will see my photo. And I say that, people always ask me, I'll plug that, is because of kind of what I went through, right?
Yeah.
It was really, really bad. But I was able to make it through the grace of God and family and loved ones around me. And I realized that things aren't as bad as people usually think they are, right? So for me, a bad day is relative. Like if you guys were ever on fire for an extended period of time.
That's a bad day.
Yeah, that's a really bad day. So now it makes me smile. I'm always in a good mood because I'm alive. I can see. I can move on my extremities. So, but yeah, find me at Imagine Advisors on all the handles. And I'd love to sit down with anybody just to talk about whatever their plans are. It's non-committal. You know what I mean? You don't have to worry about me charging you for anything. I literally just want to get to know you, help you out as best I can. And if we can, we'll do something. If not, I'll maybe make a recommendation and you kind of go about your
I love that, man. Gratitude is key.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for jumping on.
Likewise.
Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, guys.